And welcome back, rugby fans, to Rugby411. As always, I'm your host. My name is Joshua Shibata, and this is an exciting new competition. I've talked about it a little bit before in prior videos, but this is the full-blown preview because we are just days away from it kicking off this weekend. This is the 2024 Asahi Super Dry. It is sponsored Pacific Nations Cup preview by Rugby411. And this is exciting because this is a competition that, even though it's Pacific Nations, it does involve the United States, and it is something that actually the United States has some history with, which I'll go into details. We got a lot going on in this video. I'm going to talk about the background of this tournament, the future ramifications of this tournament, as well as go over the squad that head coach of the USA Eagles, Scott Lawrence, has put together. Also, too, just a little trepidation because there is the Japan team that's involved in this, and I don't know if you guys know, but I am Japanese American. So, man, this is going to be an interesting competition for me because I just don't know who to side with. If anything, all I do know is it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. 6 nations that are really trying to make a mark, especially as we start to prepare ourselves for the upcoming Rugby World Cup. I know I say upcoming, but it's still a little bit ways in the future, in 2027. But this is a great way for teams to start get ready for that Rugby World Cup. So, first of all, let's talk about the Pacific Nation Cup. This is actually the 16th iteration of the Pacific Nation Cup in some sort of form. Originally, when it first started in 2006, it was with a bunch of different people. It was with the Junior All Blacks, which is kind of the junior team of the New Zealand rugby national team. You had the Australia A, which is technically, again, kind of the second tier team of the Australian Wallabies, and then you even had Georgia in. And over the years, there's been many different teams coming in and out. As I mentioned, Georgia was part of it. Japan and USA have actually been part of a iteration of the Pacific Nations back in the past, back in 2013, 14, and 19, respectively. So USA and Japan, USA and Canada have experience with this tournament. Over the years, though, the tournament has kind of shrunk a little bit, especially because of COVID. It then became pretty much specifically focused on the Pacific nations. Your Fiji, your Samoa, your Tonga. And then it also involved Japan a couple of times as well. Basically, what it became over time was a constant annual competition that allowed what we would consider tier 2 nations. So if you're new to rugby, rugby has these unspecified tiers, these unofficial tiers. Your tier 1 nations are all the nations that are part of the big rugby countries. The ones in Europe, like England, Scotland, Wales. Ones in the coastal areas like Australia, New Zealand. You also have South Africa as well. So a lot of the big name nations. Now, these big tier nations do also have yearly competitions where they fight against each other, and it just makes those teams consistently better because they're always playing against each other every year. You have the 6 nations with the European countries, and then you have the Rugby Championship with what you would call the Southern Hemisphere countries like Australia, New Zealand, South America, and Argentina. And again, they play it every year. They are huge competitions, and it just allows these teams to consistently play against good teams, and that just makes those teams get better and better. There is a reason why the Rugby World Cup has only been won by a select few countries, and they're all tier 1 nations. Your New Zealand, your Australia, your South Africa, your England, all these countries that are in these competitions. So, you have these other countries that tier 2, the ones right below, like your Japan, like your Fiji, who, although arguably right now, those 2 countries are definitely, a lot of people are considered tier 1, your Samoa, your Tonga, your United States and Canada, they don't get the opportunity to do these kind of competitions, so they have to make their own. Thus, the Pacific Nations Cup. Now, originally, America and Canada were involved in what was called the America's Cup, that was going on prior to COVID. Unfortunately, COVID kind of destroyed it. There's a lot of rumors that they're going to build it back up post-COVID, but something happened where it didn't happen. So now USA and Canada are going to be part of this Pacific Nations Cup. And again, there's going to be some big ramifications about being part of this tournament, which I'll get into in a little bit of detail. But we're going to talk about what grouping there are and how the format of this tournament. So the way that the tournament works, there's two pools. Two pools of 3 teams each. Pool A has Fiji, who's ranked number 10 right now in the Rugby World Rankings. Samoa number 13, Tonga number 16. Then Pool B, Japan ranked number 14, the United States 19, Canada ranked 21. Canada is the lowest ranked team in the entire field of 6 teams. Now, you will have your games first within your pool. Every team plays each team once. Then, your top team that finishes at the top at the end of those 3 games in your pool play against each other the top 2 will play against each other in a knockout 4-team elimination to crown the number 1 champion. And all those games will be happening in Japan. Now, what's exciting about this is that next year's 2025 Pacific Nations Cup, the top 3 teams will go on to qualify for the 2027 Rugby World Cup. And so that's super exciting because not only will the top 3, but Fiji and Japan have already qualified from last year's competition. So that literally means as long as you're not the last place team in next year's tournament, you are automatically qualified for the Rugby World Cup, which that in itself, it will be the biggest Rugby World Cup in 2027 in Australia. They're expanding the teams that are going to the tournament from 20 to 24. So this is a huge opportunity next year for USA and Canada, both teams who were not part of the last Rugby World Cup in France. Not necessarily an easier way, but a direct way to qualify for the Rugby World Cup, as long as they're just not the last place team. That last place team will get a chance to qualify. They'll have to go through the repechage and the final qualification. We'll go over all that once we start getting close to the Rugby World Cup. But that's going to make this tournament in the future next year a huge and important fixture for Team USA. Right now, this tournament is just for bragging rights. And so let's go over the matches that Japan, USA, and Canada will be involved in. Like I mentioned before, it is going to kick off this weekend, August 25th, Sunday, 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Canada takes on Japan at BC Place in Vancouver. Then the following weekend, August 31st, Saturday, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, USA takes on Canada at Dignity Health Sports Park, yes, home of Rugby Football Club LA. And then September 7th, the final game, Saturday at 3 a.m. in the morning, yes, 3 a.m. in the morning Pacific Standard Time, because this game is going to be played in Japan. USA takes on Japan in Kumagaya, which is in the Saitama Prefecture, close to Tokyo. All these games, including the games in Pool A, you can watch on rugbypasstv. As I mentioned, after all these pool games, the top 2 teams in each pool play off against each other in a knockout 4-team elimination playoff. And the final team is crowned in Japan. Again, you can watch all those games on rugbypasstv. Super, super exciting stuff. Now, let's talk about the roster of the team. So, head coach Scott Lawrence, the USA Eagles, has mentioned that this roster is going to be filled with a lot of younger players because there unfortunately has been a load of injuries for the Eagles. This is just a small list of all the players. There's at least like 20 people on the team. But Cam Dolan, the top current player who is the most capped Eagle on the roster in 67 caps, he's hurt. Dylan the Butcher Fawcett is hurt. Joe Tauifuete is hurt. He has the second most tries out of any player in Eagles history at 23. Last year's MLR Rookie of the Year, Sam Gala, is hurt. AJ McGinty, the second most highest scoring point scorer in USA Eagles history with 371, he is hurt. All these players are hurt, and especially with the case of AJ McGinty, Joey Taufuete, Cam Dolan, huge experienced players, they are all hurt. So this roster, I'm going to pull it up, is filled with a lot of players that are very, very young. There's a few experienced players, but not a whole lot. And there's at least 6 players that are going to possibly get their very first USA Eagles cap. And let's go over that roster right here. Now, if you notice what's really cool, the majority of the players, with the exception of maybe like 2 or 3, are all current MLR players. So it really shows you how important the MLR system has become, where all these pro players are getting a chance to become Eagles, and they're getting that experience to play on the international level. So let's go over real quick, starting with your props. Jack Escarra from the Old Glory. Jake Turnbull from Anthem Rugby. Pono Davis is going to be a guy that will possibly get his first cap. He hasn't debuted yet as an Eagle, from the Houston SaberCats. Alex Mahan from Rugby Football Club LA. Paul Mullen, who has 36 caps, one of the top most experienced players of this roster from Utah. For a hooker, Sean McNulty, former LA Giltinis member, current Miami player. He's going to possibly debut very first time. Capelli Pifoletti from Saracens. He is one of the few players that's not on an MLR team. Plays for the Saracens from England, hooker. And Cyril Sama, former LA Giltinis, currently with the San Diego Legion, hooker as well. For the locks, William Wagspack from NOLA Gold. He is also a guy who could possibly get his very first cap if he gets to play in this tournament. Greg Peterson from San Diego. He is, of the current roster, the second most experienced player with 44 caps under his belt. Jason Dom from Rugby Football Club LA. And then we go to the flankers from San Diego, Vilami Helu. From Old Glory, Corey Daniel. Patty Ryan from San Diego. And Moni Tanguaya from NOLA. Your number 8s, Jamison Fauna Schultz from Old Glory. And Thomas Tuaval from Utah. From the scrum halves, very impressive JP Smith. He got his first starts with the 2 games. Unfortunately, they weren't the greatest game for the Eagles against Scotland and against Romania, but JP Smith really impressed me. He's going to possibly be the starting scrum half for your team. Ruben De Haas, another player who's playing overseas with the South African club, the Cheetahs, possibly is going to play. And then Ethan McVeigh from Old Glory, he got his first start and only start against Romania, so he can possibly get a few caps as well. Your fly halves, man, it's very depleted. Luke Carty has been a consistent player from the Chicago Hounds, but then Rand Santos, he has been a phenomenal player. Plays for UC Berkeley, possibly will be drafted in this upcoming draft. Has not debuted yet, but he was a pivotal person in the under-20s American team that got to play in the under-20s World Rugby Trophy Tournament, made it all the way to the finals against Scotland. First time that the USA team has ever done that. I'm sorry, first time in a long time that the USA team has ever done that, and Rand Santos is a major reason, so you're definitely going to see him play. There's only 2 fly-offs, so he's not going to start, because that's going to be Luke Carty, but you're definitely going to see some play time from Rand Santos. And then center, more than likely, your captain, Bryce Campbell, from the Chicago Hounds, has the most caps out of all the players here with 46. Tavita Lopetti, phenomenal player from Seattle. And then Don Bissag, another great young talent from St. Mary's College in California. He and Rand Santos, big reason why the under-20 team was so successful. Hasn't been drafted yet, will more than likely be drafted this year for MLR. And then Tommaso Boni, oh man, this guy's been phenomenal. International player for Italy, but is now a capped Eagle from Old Glory. And then your wingers, Nate the Great Osberger from Chicago, 43 caps. Again, one of the most experienced players. Connor Mooneyham, your former #1 draft pick, used to be for Seattle, now going over the Charlotte Anthem, was just recently traded. Phenomenal talent. Mitchie Wilson from New England. Toby Fricker is another guy for your fullback who will possibly get his debut. And then Chris Matina, another talented fullback from San Diego. So again, this roster, a very young roster, but I mean, Scott Lawrence, he said in his interviews, this is going to be the time. As like I said, they're preparing for that possible 2027 Olympics. This is the chance for a lot of these young players to really get the experience. What he loves about this tournament too is this is really arguably the first time that the USA Eagles as a whole have really got a lot of time to spend together. This is going to be a tournament that's going to last a month. It's going to give them loads of experience getting to play on an international level. First time for a lot of these players. They played here in America recently against Scotland and Romania. They didn't have a lot of time to prepare for it. The game against Romania, they literally had 4 days after the MLR the MLR regular season ended to get ready for that game. They've been having 10 days in camp in Chula Vista, which is in Southern California. 10 full days to prepare, loads more time, and they're going to have a whole month of working out together. So this is a great opportunity for these Eagles to finally find some cohesion. It's going to be really tough. I'm going to be honest with you. Canada might be, no disrespect to Canada, kind of the pushover team, but Japan, even though they have a young team too, they're not going to be easy to beat. And then depending where USA goes from there, Fiji has been looking phenomenal. Fiji just recently beat England and Japan last year. That's why they've ranked so high. They had a phenomenal showing in the Rugby World Cup in 2023. And Samoa has been really, really big as well. They defeated Italy just recently last month. So again, Samoa, Fiji, definitely teams that you don't want to match up against. They're not going to be easy to beat. So this is not going to be an easy tournament for USA, but it will be a great experience for a lot of these young players. And hey, it's great rugby. So I'm super excited about this. Again, if you're just getting to rugby and you want to get familiar with potential future superstars and players who will possibly play in the 2027, the next big Rugby World Cup, you gotta watch this tournament because this is going to be the showcase of those players as they start the march to 2027. So once again, games that are going to be important: August 31st, Saturday, 6 p.m., USA versus Canada at Dignity Health Sports Park. Tickets are still on sale. Highly recommend, if you're in the LA area, go watch that game. And then September 7th, Saturday, 3 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, in Japan versus Japan in Kumagaya. And then, of course, the playoffs and the finals will start in September 14th, before the final championship in Osaka on the 21st of September. Hopefully, USA gets there. You can watch all those games live and on demand on Rugby Pass TV. And again, highly recommend you guys check it out. Oh, and again, I forgot to mention, the Asahi Super Dry, they made a amazing teaser commercial for this competition. I'm going to include the link to it in the description of the video below. Hopefully, we'll see if it happens. I think YouTube will allow it. It blew me away. Highly recommend you check it out for that, just the teaser alone. But again, this is going to be amazing. Hopefully, the USA Eagles will thrive. Go USA. But again, I'm kind of on the fence because I do want Team Japan to do really well too. My Brave Blossoms, I'm kind of torn between these two teams. Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. But in the end, when USA and Japan play against each other, everybody's going to win because it's going to be an exciting game. I'm going to love every minute of it. So again, thank you very much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the pitch.